Hello there, welcome to the episode 12 of our F-14 Tomcat step-by-step video build. Now I just want to have a talk about inspiration and the whole kind of wanting to build a particular model. Now I've had this little problem where I've kind of lost my inspiration, I've lost my the whole kind of drive for wanting to build this F-14. Now this is because, plain and simply, about a month, 2 months ago, I built an F-14 Tomcat that has a GUI version for one of my my customers on commission. So as you can imagine, doing a second one pretty much such a short period of time really does kind of make you lose that kind of wanting to build a particular model. And you know, it happens to even you guys. You're probably building for a model, and for whatever reason you lose that inspiration, you lose that mojo, that wanting to build whatever model it is you're building. What would I recommend before you go off and actually pick up that model, put it back on the shelf and then pick up another model, I would recommend trying to get your inspiration back, because it's a real shame to go off and actually go through all that building. I mean, you could have gone through all sorts of detail, time, effort, and you could be really on the way for a really nice pro-built model, and to put it on the shelf is a real shame, because I mean, let's face it, I mean, as much as you might say I'll get back to that in a couple of months or something like that, I mean, it could literally sit on the shelf for years, untouched and unfinished. So while you've got the kit out, while you're working on the model, you know, go off and try and get your inspiration back. Now to do this, I mean, I would recommend you just go out and you find anything on the aircraft. I mean, the internet is a perfect place. You can go out there and you can Google, I mean, in this case it's an F-14, you know, you could Google about F-14 and you can find out bags of information. I mean, you could read stuff, you know, learn new things about the aircraft that you hadn't learned before. I mean, there's YouTube as well. I mean, you can go off onto YouTube and there is just tons and tons of videos that you can pick up. You know, maybe buy a book. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but I mean, there's the film Top Gun with Tom Cruise in. I mean, I know it's kind of a bit cheesy, but I mean, it is a pretty good film that has a lot of good footage of the F-14 in there. So go off and maybe watch something like that, you know, chill out and just learn and watch and see and look at pictures and videos of the actual F-14. So what I did is, as I've just said, I mean, I went onto YouTube and I found loads of footage and I watched it, and basically I got myself re-inspired, re-motivated to want to go off and build this F-14, which is a lot better than putting it down, putting it on the shelf of doom or something like that for it to sit there for years. So here is a little clip of a nice little video I found on YouTube to re-inspire me to get going and get motivated for building this F-14. Now that our wash has had time to dry, hopefully you can see that we haven't got that glossy, shiny, wet look to it, and it's all matted down. It's blended in quite nice, and we've got this kind of nice sort of leathery, fabricy sort of kind of look going on with this now. However, we can enhance it a little bit more by getting some of our Zandri dust, and what we want to do is kind of turn it into a bit of a dry brush. Right, so on a paper towel, what I've got, a bit of the Zandri dust, and we're just kind of making our brush sort of dry, not wet, but sort of dry, which is hence is the name dry brush, and we just flick backwards and forth. Right, and what it should do is any kind of raised areas, it should bring them out. But what we don't want to do is go onto our black areas, so you've got to try and be a little bit careful here, because again, you know, remember, I mean, this is something we should have done ages ago when we was building all our cockpit and everything, but basically I forgot, as I've already said, so I'm just kind of trying to do the best we can with what we've got. What we can also do is maybe do a little bit of a highlight as well. Now to do this, we can get a bit of a palette, we can get some of our some water, a bit of our Zandri dust, and we can water it down so it's quite kind of transparent, and then what we can do is just maybe also just touch the tips of, say, a crease here and there. Ooh, bit of a mistake, wipe it away quickly. Right, and we're just touching the tips of any kind of crease, just to sort of bring them out a little bit. We can do the front area here as well, any sort of crease, like so, and just bring everything out. There we go. Hopefully, as you can see, a little bit of a wash, a little bit of a highlight, a little bit of a dry brush, and we've hopefully turned that into a nice sort of looking leathery look. Which is to say, I mean, if we could have used milli putty, we could have put more creases and folds and all sorts of kind of stuff that would have made that look really nice, but not bad actually for a nice bit of Tamiya masking tape. As you can see, cockpit is all being painted, glued in, ejector seats are in, and this is now ready to be sealed in. A little note, the out of the box ejector seats, I don't know about you, but they're looking a little bit out of scale, a little bit smaller compared to the rest of the cockpit. Maybe that's just me, but you know, still it doesn't look too bad. I mean, I do like the look of the whole detail that's going on in here. I do like the little bit of scratch building we did, which is better than the nothing that we got with the actual out of the box kit. So what I want to do now is glue on our canopy sections. Now I always like to glue into place our front canopy section with some sort of a welding glue, a glue that melts the two plastics together and gives us a nice good seal. So let's crack on with that, and I'm just going to kind of hold it down with my thumb, and I'm just going to apply the welding glue all the way around. Well, you don't want to go nuts with this glue, right? And you want to be careful with it around your masked up areas, right? Because if it gets under your masking tape, it's going to leave a nasty mark on your nicely polished up canopy. Right, so I'm just going to leave that into place, and we can touch that up later with whatever it might need touching up with. Although, actually, I think this could do with a bit of pressure, which at hand, I don't have at hand, but I'll just quickly grab them. Just got my elastic band, and I just want to apply a little bit of pressure to this front canopy section, because something's going on here that's just pushing it up just a little bit, enough just to stop us from getting a nice good seal to prevent us from having any kind of nasty gaps going on there. So just one more tie around as he tries to get it around, and that should hopefully push it down nicely now. Right, so I actually, before I kind of move on I think we'll be alright. So what we want to do now is this last canopy piece, I like to put the front canopy piece in and glue it down nice and tightly, and to get that sorted. Now this second one is a bit of a debate and kind of like a personal choice, but we've got two types of glue. We've got our micro crystal clear, and we've got some sort of a welding glue. In this case I'm using Mr. Cement S. Right, if we use Mr. Cement S, right, it will give us a better seal. It will help melt the two pieces of plastic and bring our canopy onto our plastic here, and what it will do is it will act as a bit of a micro fill. It will kind of get rid of all those micro little gaps and seal it in nicer and neater, and it'll make it look better. But the problem is with that, once it's down, you're not really going to be able to get this canopy off again. It's down, it's down. However, micro crystal clear has the advantage that when you've glued it, it's glued in sort of, shall we say, lightly. It's glued in enough to hold it down, but if we have any nasties when we kind of unmask and we've got maybe bits or fingerprint marks on the inside, it's quite easy to come along and pop the canopy off, because it's not exactly a strong glue. So you do have that advantage of, if you do have a problem, you can sort of pop it off and fix it, unlike the Mr. Cement S. However, the problem is micro crystal clear doesn't melt both pieces of plastic, so you don't get that nice and neater glue as you would as if you had used the Mr. Cement. So you've kind of got vice versa of kind of a good and a bad side of using over glue. So in some ways it's a case of, it's up to you. You take whatever risk you want to take and whatever advantage you want to take. But before you do, always get a nice anti-static cloth and just give it a nice kind of wipe on the inside, which, yes, I know I've just kind of remembered I didn't do it with that one, but I think I should be alright. Give it a nice little wipe just to make sure you've had no fingerprints or any nasties that have got in there. We've given it a good clean. Last thing, get an airbrush, high air pressure, blast inside just to make sure you've got no bits in there to kind of go up into your canopy area. If you blast it now, blast them out, and hopefully that'll kind of reduce the risk. And then what we want to do, we want to place our canopy in place like so, and for me, I'm going to use the Mr. Cement. I want to get this nicely down. I'd rather go for a nicer, neater finish and worry about whatever problems I might have down the line, because there are a few little tricks you can do to get inside a canopy that's been glued down. Not exactly ideal tricks, you don't really want to be doing them, but if you have to, we can. So just going to go around all this and get this glued into place. with the canopy now all glued into place and all sorted, it just needed that final little touch of just spraying it all nice and black, so that we can basically, when we look through the canopy, we'll see black kind of bars and everything in there, rather than whatever we spray the actual model. Now that is basically the model virtually almost done. It was just a lot of what I've done is I've done a lot of off-camera bits and bobs here and there, because what we've had is we've got all our landing gear, we've got our pylons and weapons and all these things that are quite basic, and it's just lots of bits and bobs that just needed simply cutting off the sprue and then tidying up, which I can just show you what I mean by tidying up, just in case you haven't got that quite. Let's get a bit of extra lighting going on in here. Now what I mean is we've got a little sidewinder here, and on all plastic parts, when you cut them off the sprue, I don't know how well you're going to see it on camera, but there's always this real kind of faint little seam line that goes on, and what this is where the two pieces of plastic join together and it just leaves a little seam. Now, as good as any kit could be, you're always going to have this bit of a seam line, and you want to take care of it, because it just makes it look one rather than like two pieces, right? So for example, if we start to use washes like sludge washes, pin washes, somewhere at the end, once we've got all this sprayed up and everything, what's going to happen is you could possibly have the wash go into these little seam lines, and it just kind of brings out that detail, which is detail you don't want to bring out. So it's good to cut them off the sprue and then take care of them. And the way I like to take care of them is we can come along with a blade, nice new number 11 blade, and we just lightly scrape across this actual seam line, and what this will do, it literally sands the seam line really nice. And because we're doing it lightly, we're not kind of digging into it and making some nasty sort of marks. We're just scraping it across like so, and it sorts out that nasty seam line. Now you could come along with like one of our little mini sticks, mini sanding sticks here, and we could lightly sand away at it that way, just as good. It's just that I find when it comes to these 90-degree angles, cutting sort of like sanding back these little seam lines needs the blade really, just to get in there and sort them out. So that is what I've basically done with all the landing gear, weapons, wheel well doors, all those kind of things. I've just tidied them all up. Most of them are one piece, so that is that, but sometimes you have like a few pieces, like our fuel tanks here, gluing two pieces together, a bit of filler, a bit of sanding, a bit of rescribing. As I say, I don't want to really show that on camera because it's a lot of, it's quite a long task to get all this done, and I didn't want to bore you with all that. Plus I think I've shown you enough of this build for you to be able to take on these basic tasks now of getting all the weapons and everything ready. However, although that is like virtually the last bit of building, there's a few pointers I want to kind of point out that I did find that we want to kind of cover in this sort of like a bit of a rapid sort of video kind of style. So what we want to look at now is the pylons. There's a little problem with the instructions. Now it's one of these problems where everybody says go off and read the instructions from start to beginning before you build anything. You know, it's something I always do, and I think it's a good idea to practice because you can notice potential mistakes. However, in this case I missed it because there's a little mistake in the instructions. Normally in the instructions, if there's any holes that need to be drilled out, the instructions normally tell you to drill them out if you want such and such on the model or whatever modification or something like that. But with these instructions, they don't seem to want to tell you where to drill the holes. And on the air intake here, we do have 2 holes, and you can just see them actually in the instructions. But the instructions don't tell you to drill them out if you want to have a pylon to have your fuel tanks. Now I want my fuel tanks, but I didn't notice this, so I've got no holes on my air intake. So there is another set of holes as well somewhere, which is also on the pylon. Our pylons here for our Phoenix missiles. Again, you need to drill holes in the back of these as well to be able to put on, well, if you don't want Phoenix missiles, if you're like me and you want to put some GBUs or freefall bombs on there, you need to have these pylons, and to have these pylons you need to drill the holes, but the instructions don't tell you that. So it's something that you could have missed like I did, even though maybe you could have read through the instructions, and maybe some of you might have noticed that. But for those of you who didn't notice that, this is how we get round it. Now, first off, it's good to get your pylon, right, because we've got our little pylon here which needs to, I've done the one side just to show you, but we've got our pylon here where it's got 2 little holes, and then we've got our little 2 pegs here, and we kind of just put them on there. And what we want to do, we want to use this as a bit of a guide. But what normally happens, right, I'll just get my little drill out, is where these holes are, you normally get a bit of a you could kind of see the actual hole, because if you kind of look at the plastic real close, and you've got to kind of look at it close and sort of maybe maneuver it in the light, you do see a sort of it's kind of hard to describe, but like a little kind of deformity in the plastic. It looks a little bit, you can see that it looks different to the rest of the plastic, and you can just see these little circles that maybe looks a little bit darker than the plastic, and it's some sort of mold kind of imprint on the plastic. Although it's smooth and you could spray over this and it would look all nice still, you've just got this little imprint. And what you want to do is just where you see the imprint, just get it with a pin. And as you can see, I mean, I've just used a pin with that, and I've just gone right through and made a hole, right? Because what they do is, when they give you these options, if we turn this air intake the other way around, you'd see there'd be half drilled holes ready for you to drill all the way through. And what that means is the plastic where the hole is a lot thinner, so I've been able to just push down a bit and make literally a little hole there. So we definitely know that is where one of the holes are, and we can just see that little dark imprint here as well. I don't know if you can see that on camera if I rotate it in the light. I think you can just see that now, but there's that little imprint there, and if I push down with my needle there, I've made a little hole, but it hasn't gone quite all the way through, but that is a hole. And then we can come in with the drill and make it the nice 1mm hole that we want, and that's gone in nicely. And then we can make this little hole here a nice bit bigger, and there we go. And we can just test it by coming along with our pylon and then putting that into place, and that fits perfectly. Whoop. It fits perfectly, but maybe use your Mark 1 eyeball and just kind of look at it and just see if it looks nice and straight and true, and you know, it's going to look nice, and that does look all good. So there we go, that is how you do it. Now, you're not always going to be that lucky. Sometimes you haven't got like those little marks, so maybe putting it up to the light and maybe seeing through, you can kind of see the holes a bit as well. That's one other way of doing it. But what we've also got is our pylons here for our Phoenix missiles, which if you're going to go the free fall bomb way, what you do is you can get what you do, you build these little pylons here, which also then go onto the pylon, so it's a pylon on a pylon, and there we go. However, because I've glued this on and realised, oh no, we need holes, and the instructions didn't say that we would need it, and we kind of had to predict a little bit, we're going to have to put these holes in. Now, one way of doing it, well, first off, there's these little tabs that stick up just there, which is for the Phoenix missiles, so we need to cut these off to start with, and that can be nice and easily done with a blade, like so. Now, I've found that it's a lot easier just to drill the one hole. We've got another little tab here just to cut off, like so. But what I've found is that if we just do one hole here, it makes it a lot easier. Excuse me. So again, with the pin, right, and what you'll see is there's like a little rectangle just here where we've cut that little bit off. We want to get our needle and we want to push that down smack bang in the middle of that rectangle, and then come back with our drill, 1mm drill bit, and then we just drill into that nicely, like so. And then we could just test again with our pylon, like so, which goes in like that, and there we go. That pylon's now in there all ready to take our free-fall bombs. Now, what you want to do is you do want to tidy up our bits of plastic we've cut off here, and so you're probably going to want to come along with some sort of a mini stick, like so, and just keep rubbing at it until you get that sort of nice and smooth. But just remember, it doesn't have to be brilliant because we are going to put a pylon on top of that. Right, so just remember that. And that was kind of like a little bit of a problem with the instructions. Not really the kit. The kit's all good. It's just the instructions. Hopefully, you know, you're not going to make that mistake. Now you've seen me make the mistake, basically. But if you have, that's how you solve it. Now, we've also got some other little issues as well. Is our bit of a pylon here, and we've got the same problem that we had. Let's just bring you in with, do you remember all our flaps and tails and everything, our elevators and tails and stuff, where it's not a half and a half, a complete half and half, like say our little piece here, which is just a full-on half and half. Alright, what we've got is we've got a little nasty bit here. Let's bring you right in where it isn't quite half and half, and some reason I hate it when they do this, when it isn't quite 100% half and half, because what we've got to go off and do now is fill this in with some sort of a filler, a putty or something like that, and then we've got to sand it back and get it all nice and neat. Now that is just the same as what we did here. If you remember, with our wing section, it's just the same as that, so you know how to do that. So I'll tackle this off camera, but it's another one of those nasty little bits we've got to take care of.